Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming here today. We're going to be talking about how to market and build readership in the indie and self-publishing world. And I brought with me a good friend, Nina Grinstead, who is the owner and publicist of Valentine PR. Hello, Nina. Welcome.
Hey, Julie. This is such a treat to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited for you to be here. A little bit about Nina. She began her career as a corporate and nonprofit media specialist, but romance books had always been a passion. And inevitably in 2012, she began blogging as a new wave of romantic fiction swept the literary world. So her knowledge of social media and passion for promoting authors led her to a boutique public relations firm as a publicist, where she learned the industry from inside and out. Now, Nina, you lead your own firm, Valentine PR and Literary Management, and is thrilled to utilize the full force of her knowledge and contacts to bring happily ever afters to wider audiences everywhere. So welcome.
Thank
What
you.
A career.
That bio is so dramatic.
I loved it. I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. I like it. Such a great career. And so I'm really excited and I feel very privileged that you're here talking to us today.
Well, thank you.
Years of experience behind you. So.
Well, we've been together for a long time. You and I started together when I was just very new, and you taught me a lot about the retail market. So that's always great. So
I know I really enjoy our time when we get to like meet up at conferences. I feel like I've learned a lot from you, and this has been a really brilliant partnership in many ways. So hopefully, what I'm excited about is I think we'll be able to really impart a lot of great information to our viewers. So with that, we can get started. In your bio, you mentioned how you started with blogging. So would you mind just kind of talking a little bit more about that experience and how it shaped your career trajectory to where you are now?
Yeah. So I was always a reader as an adult. But I read more John Grisham and Danielle Steele and, those kind of books. And then in 2012, I will always credit E.L. James with, I read 50 Shades of Grey, and I was like, oh, wow.
Just a little book that happened to rock the world.
Exactly. So I read that book, and then I was reading articles like what to read after 50 Shades of Grey. And it kept taking me to a site called Goodreads. And then I started noodling around Goodreads, and then I read a book, Gabriel's Inferno, and I joined a group on Goodreads that they used to have back then. And back then that was really where, Facebook wasn't really a big deal about talking about stuff. It was really Goodreads and blog websites. And that's how we were getting our reviews and stuff and recommendations. And so I had a very successful, very big blog back in the day reach out to me and asked me to be the dark reviewer. So I came on and was reviewing everything that was very dark and, BDSM and all that kind of stuff. And it was great. I really, really loved it. And then several of us kind of broke off. We created our own blog. And then in that time, I became very good friends with a girl who owned a PR firm. And I went to work for her back into 2015. So it felt like a very great transition for me because I always think that things that I've done in my past help me be better at my current job. So felt like because I was a blogger, it helped me be a better publicist because I understood the mind of the reviewer and the blogger and what they were looking for and all of that kind of stuff. And, not only do I own Valentine PR and that side of the marketing industry, I'm also have become a literary agent in the past 2 years. And so I think that being a literary agent helps me know the market on the PR side and vice versa. I can be sitting in a meeting and they'll say, oh, well, this book is doing really well in foreign territory. And in my head, I can comp 8 books to that because I'm so entrenched in all of, in all of the romance world, but I really am only focused on romance. I don't do any other genres. a little bit of women's fiction if I have a client who does women's fiction, and then some romantasy or whatever, but really is more contemporary, dark,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think, that's a good thing to point out that you work in romance books particularly, but I do think, a lot of what we're going to talk about today, other, authors who write in other genres can definitely 100%. Take away everything that we are talking about and use it for their own business.
Yes. So. No, most definitely.
So with that, I mean, that's kind of how you started working with indie authors, right? Mm-hmm. And so indie authors romance is sort of the cornerstone of the indie community. And so what do you like then about working with indie and self-published authors? And then on the other side of that, what are some challenges with that?
I love the indie author has all the control. So it's really very fun to be from the conception of the phone call that I get that says, I have a book idea. And from that book idea, we really just kind of carve everything out, like exactly what we're doing.
Right.
And, all the way. I have clients. With my clients, I represent them all very differently. Some, I know every single thing that they're doing every single day. Others, they just kind of reach out like when they, need me and stuff. So, but I love being from the beginning on the, when the idea comes and, seeing it all the way through, and they have all the control with it,
Right.
And so that is the greatest thing about self-publishing is that you are not beholden to any other constraints except for, what you put on yourself.
Right.
The great thing about traditional publishing or being a hybrid author is you are exposed to an audience that we can't get, you know what I'm saying? Because if you get your book in a Target or a Barnes and Noble or, any brick and mortar store, that's an audience that I can't reach, because that's the person walking into Kroger and seeing a book and picking it up. And I always kind of in the back of my head have the notion of, my mother is a huge reader. She's a voracious reader. How do I reach my mother? My mother is not on the Facebook or the Instagram or TikTok. She's not on there. So how do I find my mother? And in turn, how does my mother find my clients' books? So that's one of the ways that, that's one of the all that I'm always thinking about. But one of the biggest challenges that I think every author has right now, whether they're indie or self-publishing, is that you're marketing in so many different ways, because the Bookstagram reader is different than your like Facebook reader in a lot of aspects. And then your TikTok reader is, because Facebook is very static. TikTok is very, your posts over there are very like static. Just on Instagram, they're pretty pictures. On TikTok, they're videos. So you're marketing to different readers, and the digital reader in the romance community might not mind a sexy abbed guy, but the reader on TikTok who might be younger, in high school or college or, that new adult thing, they don't want a sexy guy on the cover because they don't necessarily want people to know what they're reading. So it is a different market. And for each kind of social media platform, different kind of reader. Back in the day when we started out, there was just one cover. And now I have clients who have sometimes upwards of 4 covers per book. So, I mean, it's always funny, because when my husband and I walk into Barnes and Noble and we're in the romance section, I'm like, what consistently do you see differently here? And he says, there's no sexy men on these covers at all, period. So it's marketing to all different places, because a lot of times a digital reader doesn't mind a sexy guy in there because they know what they're getting.
Exactly.
They know they're probably going to get a sexy romance. So, I can
understand that. You have the idea of, as a self-published author, you have full control, as you talked about. So in a way, that's a great thing. And but then it also means the challenge to that is that you have different readers across different social media platforms, as you mentioned, and different retailers, as we've mentioned. A Barnes & Noble Nook reader, or even a Barnes & Noble physical book reader, is different than a Barnes & Noble Nook reader. And so in that way, it means like you do have to sometimes think about maybe having different covers, different descriptions, things like that. But the good thing is, as an indie author, you get to control all of that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I will also say that I would say of the 100 and maybe 10 clients that Valentine PR has, I would say 95 of them write in first person.
Oh, that's an interesting part as well. You have like, how kind of point of view are you writing as? Another thing to think about.
I would say the rest of them, the other 5%, write in third person. And for me, marketing a third person indie book to that kind of social media is a much tougher sell, because more readers like to read a first person because they like the male POV, the female POV. They just like that. I mean, we'll have people, like, we'll put a sign up in our Facebook group, and sometimes if the blurb is in third person, the first question they ask is this first person or third person? Because I don't read third person. And it's very interesting. So, like, I do have a client who does amazing at Barnes & Noble. Samantha Chase. She's third person. She's that family saga. She does great at a Barnes & Noble, because that, I typically think that more brick and mortar reader, they're not as choosy. They're not as picky about what POV, and they really do like.
They want a good story. They want a story that from an author they can trust, that they know is going to give them a quality book. I don't think, as you mentioned, it's about whether or not their POV is one or the other, which makes me consider my next question about how do you approach then understanding like an author's unique voice and their target audience for a book. So you talk about POV, for instance, like how they write. Is there more to it than just that?
Yes, because let's say I have a client who writes new adult sports romance, and new adult sports romance is very popular right now. Hockey, football, all of those. That is, we are then looking at covers. The cover is really the biggest. We think nobody judges a book by its cover, but we all do, because our eyes go to what intrigues us the most. And so we want to convey on that cover very much what they're getting. So kind of with the sports romance that's so hot right now, the illustrated covers are really what's selling. When you when you walk into your Barnes & Noble, you have just tables of covers with illustrated covers. And people like that because they like to be able to hold that book and they're not self-conscious of it. I mean, 50 Shades of Grey was a great example of, man, that was a beautiful cover with a tie on the front of it.
Yeah. Simple, but like effective.
It's simple, but effective. But behind the cover was, you were like, oh, wow. You know what I'm saying? So, so I think the cover is probably the most important thing that you can put on your book.
Yeah.
The second most important thing that I always preach to, especially newer authors, when they come to me and I do consultation calls, or I do, meetings with people at conventions and stuff, is put all your money into an editor. The editing process is one of the most important processes, because it doesn't matter how great your cover is or how I can have a huge marketing budget and market, but my goal is to get people to the product page. I can't get them to click the one click, but my goal is to get them to the product page or to a shelf on a store and make it as enticing as possible. And then you have to have the book. The author has to have the book to do that. And editing is one of the biggest things that people are like, that's one of the quickest ways somebody will DNF a book is,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I've definitely seen reviews where authors are like, there's too many typos or
Yeah.
things like that. So making sure that your story is really buttoned up is only going to help you. And I think it's money well spent when self-published authors are thinking about, how to create their budgets around their books and their launches.
Right. Exactly. And another way that we really focus on the relationships with our influencers. And so our influencers and we have such a wide range. We have people who just read and review on Goodreads. We have people who read and review on all the retailers. We have people who don't really put reviews out there, but have great engagement on their social media and will talk about a book, whether it be Instagram or TikTok or, Facebook. I do feel like that some of Facebook has died down a little bit more and people have preferred to go over to Instagram in the book marketing, aspects. But I also wonder, and I might be aging myself here, because Facebook tends to be a social media platform for an older demographic. So, the younger, and I'm on TikTok and Instagram. So I'm not saying the younger generation. I know they hate when we do that. The younger readers but what I do mean is that Facebook has been around for a very long time, and people who've been there a long, that's their chosen.
Right. They trust it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but there's less that you can do on Facebook than you can on Instagram or, TikTok or whatever. And I do feel like a little bit of TikTok is kind of going away, not going away, but where back during the pandemic and, right after the pandemic, TikTok, Book Talk was so hot. I feel like a lot of those people have moved back to Instagram for whatever reason. And I don't think that TikTok is the platform to sell books like it was a couple of years ago.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I was just going to ask about like current trends, right, in the indie and self-publishing market, and how these trends are impacting book strategies, when you're launching. So it sounds like now, obviously, social media is pretty much like a bread and butter space for authors looking to launch a book. And now it sounds like some of the ways that we thought were where authors needed to go, like TikTok, are changing.
And I'll tell you the funniest thing about TikTok, and I learned this from a very large TikToker a couple of years ago, and I was talking about her. She goes, on Instagram, we love to follow the authors. We love to follow the authors because that's where we develop a relationship with them. We comment, we talk, we see their stories, this kind of stuff. On TikTok, we know that the author on TikTok is trying to sell you their book. So we don't necessarily take recommendations from authors on TikTok. We take recommendations from our friends on TikTok. So because if you really do think about it, Colleen Hoover had such amazing success through Book Talk, but it wasn't Colleen who was doing that. It was the people reading the book that was really pushing that. And that was just such an amazing kind of thing to see, and how I'm such a data-driven, my mind is so data-driven that it was just amazing to watch. It was just like, these people have fallen in love with these books, and, it was just kind of everywhere. It was kind of like when 50 Shades of Grey came out, just in a different way. We didn't have that kind of vehicle to talk about that book. That was very much a lot of word of mouth, So I also think that branding is extremely important. Like, you want your social media, especially if you're going to focus on, if you have the time and can focus on all three big social media platforms and Goodreads, that's great. But if you can really hone in on one, because that's what your time is, you really need to focus on Instagram and getting, keeping your brand very consistent. When somebody goes to your social media page, we want them to see, like, oh, what book is coming out next? It's great to have pictures of your dogs or your children or whatever, but you really need to mix and really focus on your books, because that's what people are coming to see. And if you're not sharing your book, then influencers are like, well, why should I share your book if you're not sharing your book? Or if an influencer says, oh, I loved this book by Monica Murphy, and then they go to Monica Murphy's social media page, they can see she's talking about all her books, and they can pick something up. But if they see somebody share, author XYZ, and they go to that Instagram page and they don't see anything, then you've truly lost a potential reader. So yeah. So the branding and consistency of what you're doing on social media is really, really very important.
That makes sense. I feel like with Instagram, you should really think about it as like a professional, place for your books, right? I think because it's so image and like curated driven, it like everything looks very pretty, and like you've got the nice flat lays and things like that. I feel like maybe Facebook could be a place where you insert a couple of dog pics or things like that, because maybe you're interacting more in the comments or things like that with readers, especially with like author reader groups on Facebook.
Yes. And Facebook does not show an author's page as much as they used to, because it really became kind of a pay and play type. The more you get on ads, the more that they would serve you. Well, back in the earlier, 2013, 14, 15, the author Facebook page was where you went. Like that's where you followed and did all of that. The other thing that I think that authors really need to do is they really need to be proactive with their readership, whether they're talking to their readers through their stories, maybe do Q&As. People love that, but if you are looking for, if you are looking to your launch of your next book, and maybe you don't have a PR firm, maybe you just, you're doing on your own. A great way to do it is if your book is, I'm just going to go back to new adult sports romance. If your book is new adult sports romance and you're trying to build a readership there, the greatest thing to do is maybe go pick some authors who write in that same vein, and then go to that author's Instagram page, to their tagged posts, and see who's posting about them and reading about them and creating content for them. And you can always reach out on DM. Like that's how you can build your audience, is going through and just developing a relationship with them. And hey, I'd like to offer you an ARC. I see that you read Monica Murphy. I think you would probably read, enjoy my book. And, people love discovering new authors because they like to feel like they have ownership in that. So I think that it's really great. A very, very, very successful indie author that has just blown up, especially on TikTok, and has had an amazing career. One of the things that she said was when she went to release one of her first books, she reached out to 1,000 TikTokers. And this was like in the thick of the pandemic and everything. She reached out to 1,000 TikTokers and was like, hey, I'd love for you to read my book.
There you go. Putting the networking back in social network.
Exactly. So yeah. So,
you gotta like pound the pavement, like you really have to put in the work to like reach those people that can help you amplify your book. You can't just sit back and like put a post up and hope that people discover it.
No, exactly. So I think that it's always very important. The other thing that I always say is if somebody writes a review or somebody does a post, to always thank them.
Yeah, there you go.
Because I remember when I was a blogger, see, this is going back to my blogger days, and I would write a review. I mean, it took hours to write reviews sometimes. Yeah. And like, if you did it and the author came in and said, oh my God, thank you so much for this review, I was like, oh, she recognized me. So she recognized my work. So then that author really had me. Yeah.
It's like that personalization, like personal appreciation, that person who took the time to write a review or create a TikTok or an image or whatever, like they took time out of their own day as well to that. So I think that's a really great point of like just being a little appreciative and kind back.
Yeah.
And then that also will further your relationship with that person.
Right. Exactly. And if you're really big, in terms of like how much posting you have, you can have somebody come on your page and just be that person who's posting.
Yeah, eventually you can get your own social media manager.
Right, exactly. But I do think it's just really, really important to always acknowledge in any way, shape, or form, even if it's with a heart or whatever,
Yeah. So thinking through it, I think for authors coming into this, it's okay. You want to make sure that you're utilizing social media in the right way. You're putting in the footwork to really like laying the groundwork, so to speak, to like reach out to influencers, reach out to other authors, making sure that your brand looks aesthetically pleasing and like in line with what you're writing. And I think, again, it goes back to the idea of TikTok, Instagram, Facebook are all different places where you're going to have different types of posts and things like that. So it comes back to a lot of research and making sure you really understand those spaces. Are there any other things besides social media that authors could utilize to help get their book out there?
Well, I think one of the things that a lot of romance authors are using, and obviously any author could do this, is I'm drawing like running ads, running Goodreads giveaways, having, a lot of authors don't like to be on Goodreads. So like our company, we have a girl who Christine, who very well, who runs our clients' Goodreads pages. So, because she goes in and does stuff, because uploads stuff, make sure that everything, because authors do kind of struggle with being on Goodreads. So
really, okay,
yes, we do a lot of mailings. Also, we do a lot of book boxes, a lot of book mail. We do a lot of curated stuff like that with our influencers. The other thing that I think is very important for authors to remember is, I know everybody wants to be with the biggest and best influencers with the most followers and all that kind of stuff, but I have seen over the course of the past 3 or 4 years, influencers who were smaller, who have grown to have great success. So, and they have taken a lot of those authors that they read who were small when they came, because a smaller author might have taken a chance on a smaller influencer and has just grown with them. So I don't ever think you should discount somebody with a smaller following. I think it's important to look at what their engagement is,
That's a great point, because it's like, why try and catch the really big fish? That's maybe going to be a really hard task, where you can maybe catch like a lot of little fishes that could potentially become big fishes. But also, if you have more little fishes, that's also still a lot of new readers that they could reach, instead of just putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Exactly. Because I can assure you, some of the really bigger influencers, they're getting hundreds of requests, so I think it's just important to always look at somebody's engagement and, don't ever discount, the smaller influencer.
It really sounds like authors need to be a little more extroverted than they're used to being.
Oh, yes. And that's tough. I mean, that's tough for a lot of authors. One of the great things about being an author is you can stay at home and sit behind your computer and, and write. So,
I know now it's like a whole, being especially obviously with indie. And I think this goes for trad too. It's like, you really have to be a full business now and a brand, and it's not so much sitting behind the computer. I mean, you have to be engaging on social media. You got to come out of your shell a little bit, at least in the beginning, to, like we talked about, to meet these people online and get the following and the readers, and meet them where they are. So unfortunately, introverts out there looking to find success, you may have to go out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yes.
So in terms of like, long-term success, how do you stay updated, or how should authors stay updated on industry changes? And like, how do you adapt your strategies then to align with these trends?
Well, in terms of what I do at my company is I employ people of all strengths. So
Hmm.
I think it's really important because I'm not very technologically savvy, whatever, however you say that. But I have a lot of people on my staff who are, and
Mm.
I have a lot of different perspectives. And I think it's just always very important to keep talking and talk. I talk to my clients and I learn things. I talk to my staff and I learn things. I'm on social media and I hear stuff. I go to conferences. I think it's always important, especially if you're an author and you can go to a conference about, that does talk about marketing, that does talk about improving your craft and stuff like that. I mean, I think that for me to stay up on my trends, I can't be at my age and just
Yeah.
only feel comfortable with Facebook, because then I'm missing out. Again, the toughest thing now is how you're marketing to such different groups. So I know the girls who work with me that are kind of like
Yeah.
of my age, but then I have several girls who work with us that are kind of in that younger demographic that really
Hmm.
know TikTok and really know Fit Instagram and know the graphics that people are sharing and the engagement
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. I don't.
Yeah.
So part of the longevity is to keep up, just to keep up with people.
Yeah.
On it needs to be a little multi-generational.
Yeah, I think that's a
you
great
know,
way to put it because,
um,
like you said, different generations have different preferences, and so in order
right.
to reach readers, um, ask your niece or your nephew or something, and even if you don't have to
Exactly.
hire someone, but reach out to someone within your family who you can talk to about
Yeah.
certain things,
And
and,
I
and
think it's also really important to go, like, to bookstores and see
yeah.
what's on the shelf, to see what trends are happening there. I always think it's great to subscribe to Publishers Weekly,
Hmm.
like to keep up on the news,
Yep.
stuff like that, to keep up on the trends. But um if it was just me by myself, I would not be where I am, because I
Right.
have to really, and you and I have conversations and
Yeah.
you tell me, what's happening over there, and I'm telling you kind of what's happening over here. And it's all
Constantly learning, new
right,
things
right.
from each other,
Yes.
that's why like keeping conversations open, talking to other authors,
Mhm.
having building a connection of authors
Mhm.
within like as an author, having
Mhm.
author friends and building those relationships is also like just imperative, I think, to long-term
Yeah.
success. Because in many ways, like
Mhm.
the indie community is very welcoming. And so,
Mhm.
and very savvy and up to date on everything. And so, making friends there and just having that network of
Yeah.
indie authors, I think, is
Mhm.
pretty vital to like a newer author strategy long term.
It is, and I think that when you have author friends, you can learn from them, because you're like, "Hey,
Right.
I heard this, and, do you this?" I think that the one thing that I like to tell my clients, or any authors that I talk to, is, um, comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm,
So that's like one of the things that, try your hardest not to compare yourself to people,
right. Or
because
compete.
everybody's at a different stage in their
Yeah.
career. Everybody has different launches, everybody has different budgets, everybody, and sometimes it just takes, one book to put somebody really, out in the stratosphere. And so, I think sometimes the hardest thing is for authors to feel like they're doing everything they can, and that they're not having the success that some of the other people are. And why is that? And so, but yeah.
Yeah. So instead of being, comparing yourself or being competitive with others, think of
Mhm.
it more community, as a
Right.
community of like-minded people.
Mhm.
Which brings me to my next question about like reader communities and
Mhm.
with genres and stuff, or a
Mhm.
specific niche. Are there any strategies that you use to generate a sense of like community among readers of, let's say, a romance genre, like when you're marketing a book to for a book launch?
Yes. So, with our book launches, we do like big signups and we share
Hmm.
them. The author shares them. That's where we're kind of getting, their audience. Again, the the reader right now in today's is reading by trope. That is what they're reading by. They're not coming to me right now and saying, I keep looking around. I'm in my daughter's office. I keep looking around. Everything's Taylor Swift. They don't come in and say, hey, I want a Taylor Swift book. They come in and say, I want a billionaire age gap mafia book. So it is really, really important to find your audience that's reading billionaire age gap mafia, and so, and there's, we, with our influencers, we know all of the books that they like to read, because when they fill out a form, they pick out all the tropes that they like to read. They want to read, authors of color, LGBTQ, mafia, sports romance. We have it all. So then when an author comes to us and says, oh, I'm writing a, mafia romance, then we can go and find those readers. And that's how readers are reading. If you look at the post on social media, how readers are talking, they are talking by tropes. That is how they're reading.
That's a great point. And so it's interesting that it's almost less about the author, like you mentioned Taylor Swift, or let's say it's less about okay, I want to read a Monica Murphy book, but it's okay, do you have a Monica Murphy book that is a dark mafia friends to lover? I mean, type of story. Exactly. It's those tropes instead that are pulling readers together. Not that authors should write to the trope in that way and change their entire way that they write books, but I think it's something to keep in mind, both in the marketing.
In the marketing, for sure. I do think that when you're going into a book, to look at, are there tropes that you're already picking out and you're already writing and stuff, because those are really the ones you want to capitalize on, because it's not really an elevator pitch you're giving people anymore. If you're giving, you're not going in and saying, oh, this meets this, or this book is, a 3-sentence. You can just say it's a billionaire age gap mafia. And they're like, okay, that's all I need to know.
Keywords. Honestly, it's all about keywords now.
Exactly. It's I tell my clients when they're writing their blurbs, at the top of their blurbs, to put from USA Today bestselling author Taylor Swift comes a mafia age gap billionaire book.
There you go. Short and sweet.
I mean, there you go. Yeah. So, because you have these readers' attention when they're scrolling on the retail platforms like that.
Yep. You only have 2 seconds to get someone interested in your book.
Exactly. And I remember when we were at NOOK one year, and Dave Chesum, the Kindlepreneur guy, he did a whole thing on the Amazon product page, the Barnes & Noble product page, the Apple, what people are looking at on the product page. And it was so interesting. And he's like, the blurb, a lot of times they don't even click the read more button. If you don't catch them in those first few sentences, then they're going on to the next thing.
And to be honest, that actually is true with social media posts. You don't want a long social media post about something. You need to get someone to read those for I think it's 2 lines that they show on Instagram on a post. And it's you got to get them in those 2 lines. So, that's a very small amount of characters that you can use. So how do you do that? Keywords.
Yes, exactly.
Is really the way to do it.
Exactly. Another thing that I think that all authors need to really, really focus on is their newsletter, because that is theirs. That they own that. That is theirs. And there's several ways to build your newsletter up with your audience readership, but I think the newsletter is one of the author's biggest assets. So
that was actually going to be, I guess that leads me into my next question about building a sustainable long-term readership for an indie author. And I think the newsletter is really where that comes into play, because those are your loyal, dedicated readers that signed up for information about your books.
Exactly. And you want those people them to stay engaged. So you really want a mix of, we did a big survey recently with our influencers on author newsletters and what they liked and what they didn't like. And some of it was a little contradictory. You know, someone's like, oh, I love this. And the next person was like, oh, I hate this. And it was the same thing. But for the most part, the subscribers, they don't want 100 newsletters a month.
No,
they want a mix of what your book is, like what you're doing in your personal life or something like that, and talk about your upcoming book or something like that. Overall, they all said they don't like it when the only time they hear from an author is when they're having a release or when they're having a sale. So
interesting.
You know, I remember flying home on a flight one day and I was talking to a girl sitting next to me who was a reader, and she said, oh, I subscribe to a lot of newsletters. So I was like, oh, well, what do you like the most? And she goes, I love it when they bring in do a deleted scene with a character or a Q&A with a character, or, you know, a little tidbit about, you know,
their process writing the book or something, you know, it's a little bonus content or something like,
exactly.
Hey, I'm going to be doing a new cover, or what do you think of these two covers, or which one would you choose? Or, you know, here's my writing, how I chose how to do this. That's a great point about your newsletter. And so, you know, people don't want to be sold things necessarily.
Yeah.
You know, they don't mind buying stuff, but they don't want to be sold stuff. And so I think
that's a great way to put that, Julie. Like, that really is.
Yeah.
And they want to feel like they have some part in the relationship with the author, you know, and there's good and bad in that, because a lot of, you know, I get clients all the time who are like, oh my God, look at this email I got from this reader. And it just, you know, I cannot ever imagine emailing Danielle Steele back. Like, well, we didn't have emails back in the day, but like, I can't believe that you put this character did this. And I was, you know, I mean, just the things that authors get, and every author who's watching this goes sitting there going, oh yeah, I've gotten that stuff. But, you know, it shows
they care, right?
Yeah.
They care. They really care.
They do.
I guess that's a good way to spin it.
Yes, exactly.
What kind of cadence then should someone with their, like, what kind of cadence of newsletters should someone have? Because you said don't bombard them, but then what is sort of a good medium to that?
I think that the most that people were saying was once a week, twice a month, you know. So I feel like, you know, I know that I get newsletters, you know, I subscribe to my clients' newsletters, but I get newsletters, you know. They also like them short and not super long.
I was just going to ask about length.
Yeah. They now if you're putting like a excerpt or a teaser in there or something like that, that's one thing, but they just really it goes in again to how long somebody has, you know.
That attention span.
So,
that's a great point. And so then the other thing about, you know, of this conversation is, so you let's say you launch your book, and it's doing really well, but how do you maintain then, like, what kind of marketing techniques could you do to like maintain that momentum?
That is always very, very, because you really, a lot of times you have just like kind of like a 2 or 3 week until you see that new,
and everything goes into the launch, right? All your personal efforts go into the
launch. Yes. A lot of things that we're doing is we're really trying to stretch out the launch. We are, when we are doing like mailings of packages and book mail and book, you know, promo boxes and stuff like that, where before we were trying to get them right at release day, now we're really kind of drawing it out to keep the postings going up, to keep people talking about them. You know, you want to maybe hit hard your ads at the beginning, but have enough in the budget to where you can sustain going over a longer period of time. Keep talking about your book. Keep sending those newsletters. When somebody makes content like a pretty video or a pretty, edit with the characters, this is what I think, whatever,
Yeah.
then, share that. A lot of our clients do like Pinterest reveal boards and then, have stuff on Pinterest, but you just have to keep talking about the book. And if you're talking about the book, then hopefully other people are talking about the book as well,
Yeah. Yeah, you got to keep people chatting about it, which, I mean, we've been talking a lot about Taylor Swift, and that's actually gave me an idea. One of Taylor Swift's great marketing techniques when launching a new album is she keeps putting out different versions of the album in like a very short period of time. And I wonder if that could be a thing you apply to books as well. Like you start with the one version and then maybe you have like a new cover version with like a bonus chapter. And then maybe you do like another specialer version, a hardcover edition or something like that.
I can look at Valentine's shelves and I can see Gianna Darling has 3 different covers. She's got a man cover, she's got a female cover, and then she's got like what they call like a discreet or, one of those types of covers. And it's just keeping. Now, the one thing that you do have to be a little bit leery about is for people saying that you're just doing money grabs, but it is, but again, you're marketing to different readers because I don't mind a man on a cover. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a book collector. I don't have this by any means, but I don't collect books. So I don't mind that. But
you may pick up readers like the shirtless male cover as opposed to like the man with the tie cover who are different types of readers. So it continues that sort of like marketing of like you're reaching those different readers. And then like I sort of mentioned, it's like maybe you do add in some bonus content, stuff that you already would have included in the newsletter that you're using. You can add it into your book. And then you release these like different variations of your book over the period of a few weeks or months or whatever it is.
Yes. The one thing that I do love about kind of the alternate cover or discrete cover, however you want to refer to it, is that I remember doing I was doing a Zoom interview with Lauren Asher, and there was probably about 400 people on the Zoom, and we were talking, and her demographic on that call was a much younger crowd, early 20s, late teens. And one of the things that several of the girls said on that call were, thank you for having a cover that doesn't have a man on it, because it is against my culture to have a man on a cover. I mean, it is, especially some of these YA readers or whatever, they can't, they can't have that on a cover. And so I think that's also something to consider. You can't just pigeonhole yourself and put blinders on because you're trying to reach a whole different audience. So, there are things that,
I think when it comes to marketing, I think one of the biggest things that authors can do, and this is because they are a self-published or indie author, they have full control. Going back to where we started, they have full control. You can do as many covers as you want. You can have them as many in different variations and versions as you want. And so you control all of that. And so you can do the more discreet cover. You can have the sexier cover. You can have the illustrated cover. There's no stopping you other than potentially a budget, which, there's so many tools now of doing, you can create your own covers through various services or things like that. I'm not sure I would advocate for AI covers.
No,
I would say no, don't do that. People have 5 fingers.
I think then another great thing for authors to realize is don't be married to one thing, because I have authors who they will show me a cover and I'm like, I don't, and they're, nope, this is what I want to use. I'm like, okay. I mean, ultimately it's their book. So it's that, but you have to be prepared to, if you're going to die on this mountain, then if you have the flexibility, it's really great, because if you're running ads on your book and you're having great click through, but you're not having great sales, what that says to me is whatever ad you're running, you're getting them to the product page, but There's something on the product page that is not making them click that book. So is it the cover? Is it the blurb? Obviously the blurb is the cheapest thing to change, but you need trusted people that you can go and talk to, because a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, I like that blurb. No, you need people who are going to say, I wouldn't have picked up this blurb this book because of something like that. I don't like the cover, or, whatever. So
yeah, don't just ask one person, ask a few different people what they think. Ask your author friends, your reader group,
your beta readers, some of your close readers, like, hey, if you did not know me, would you pick up this book?
Right.
Based on this blurb or this cover, Now, I do think that when you go in your author group and say, hey, do you like this cover? Everybody's going to say yes, because who wants to be the jerk that's like, oh no, I don't like that cover, so yeah, but
trust, gotta trust people.
Yes.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation.
It has been.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much. I think this has been super illuminating for me. I feel like sometimes when I talk to you, I feel like there's always like some brainstorming sessions going on. Now I'm like, ooh, I have more things I can talk to our authors about.
Yes. No, I love it. I love it. And I think that, we did get to touch on some things that are really important in the marketing space, whether you're a traditional author or a self-pub or hybrid or whatever. So, yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Nina. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, any words of wisdom for our viewers here who are getting started.
I think take the chance, I think for new authors, take the chance. I think for authors who have been doing this, who maybe feel like your audience is getting a little stale, like, what is it that you could change that,
Right. Don't be afraid to change direction, to pivot, to take a risk.
Right.
Because you're in control.
Right. Because what was working in 2018 is totally different than what's working in 2024. So go freshen up those covers, go freshen up those blurbs, it's just a different market. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Nina. Thank you everyone who's watching, and
thank you.
We'll see you soon, I hope. And all right. Bye.